a commercial executive at Bytes. So we'll get started this morning. What we're going to talk about today is the licensing for the Power Platform. Just to let you know, this meeting is going to be recorded and the recording will be available for you by tomorrow. If I can ask you all to be on mute for today, if you have any questions, if you can either use the chat window or I'll pause after this section, and feel free to then unmute yourself and ask away any questions you might have. So the Power Platform is a suite of products that works alongside and fits into your software and services. From getting insights from your data with Power BI, creating low to no code applications with Power Apps, building automated business processes with Power Automate, to engaging with your customers with Power Virtual Agents. And today what we're going to do is look at the licensing for all of these. So we'll look at Power Apps, we'll look at Power Portal, Power Automate with RPA and AI Builder, Power Virtual Agent, and Power BI. But first, let's have a look at Power Apps. Power Apps is what allows us to build applications using low to no code. Now, to license Power Apps, we're going to need to understand a few things about the applications you're building. So first question will be, what does your application connect to? So are you using standard or premium connectors? And we'll have a look at what standard and premium connectors are. Then, where is your data stored? Is it stored in Dataverse? So I've just added a screenshot here so you can see what the Dataverse environment looks like. Or are you storing your data in SharePoint list, for example, or Excel? And then finally, are you building Canvas apps or model-driven apps? Canvas apps are included in Office 365. They're used to build simple applications using simple drag and drop interface. If you want to build more complex applications using a component-focused approach, then you'd be looking at using model-driven apps, and these require Power Apps licensing. And then we were referring to standard and premium connectors earlier. When you build an application, you choose what data your application connects to. It's either going to be data that's included within 365, so things like Excel or SharePoint Online, for example. These are what's called standard connectors. They're included with 365. Or you could connect data outside of that. So it could be on-premises data like SQL. You could connect to data in Azure. These are premium connectors. When you build your application, you'll be able to see whether a connector is premium or standard. So if you look here on the Amazon Redshift connector, you can see a little diamond. That means it's a premium connector. If it doesn't have a little diamond, it's a standard connector. And before you start building your application, if you want to find out whether a connector is premium or standard, there is a link here as well, which has a list of every connector and whether they're standard or premium. So let's go back to the questions. So if we are building applications that are connecting to premium connectors, that are using Dataverse, and or are building model-driven apps, then we're going to need to license Power Apps separately. And to license Power Apps, you must license not only the users who create the applications, but also any users accessing the applications. And there are 3 ways to license Power Apps. Per user per app, which is also called per app, that allows the licensed user to access one application and one portal. And we'll have a look at the portal licensing in the next few slides. We often see this license for users starting their Power Apps journey because it only allows you to access one application. But you can stack the licenses so that your licensed user can access several applications. For example, if you were to buy 2 Power Apps per user per app license, your user could access 2 applications. When your users start using more and more applications, then the per user model will become a cheaper option. It is again licensed per user, but allows licensed user to access unlimited applications. And then finally, Microsoft released a pay-as-you-go plan for Power Apps. It's billed via Azure, so you'll need an Azure subscription. And that allows you to only license the users as and when they are accessing the application. So that's licensed on a per active user per month basis. And it is also a great way to understand how much your apps are being used. You can see a report of the users accessing the app, and it's a pay-as-you-go, so you can change on a monthly basis and then maybe go to a per user plan or a user per app plan. Now, what if we are creating an application that is using only standard connectors, that is storing data in things like SharePoint files or Excel sheets, and we're only using Canvas apps? Well, if that's the case, it is included as part of Microsoft 365 and Office 365 suites. That means that any users accessing these types of applications would only need Office 365 or Microsoft 365 license. And the only suite that doesn't include Power Apps right is the Microsoft 365 F1 suite. And so what could we do with standard connectors? What could we do with the Power Apps right included with Office 365? Here are a couple of examples. We could look at a meeting room booking app that connects only to Outlook and users. So that's only standard connectors. So again, included with 365. Or we could look at an expense app here, which is only connecting to SharePoint Online. So again, we're only using standard connectors here. And then we also have Power Apps rights, which is also known as seeded rights as part of Dynamics 365. So additional Power Apps licenses are not required as long as the application you're creating is used within the same environment as Dynamics 365 to extend and customize Dynamics 365 applications. And of course, accessed by Dynamics 365 Enterprise licensed users. For users without those Dynamics 365 licenses, needing to access the app built around Dynamics 365, you could also license them with a Power App license. Now, before I go on to Power Apps Portal, I'll just pause in case you have any questions. As I said, feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself, or of course use the chat window. Andrew is asking, how are apps defined? I'm not sure what you mean. I'm really sorry. When having multiple
Fabienne,
apps
sorry, I'll unmute
environments.
myself.
Thank you. Sorry, it's easier
That's all right.
sometimes, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So I was thinking we have multiple apps as such in an environment, but they're bundled into a solution file. And I just want to check that you only have to license the solution and not each individual app, because that makes it prohibitively expensive for us.
I do believe it would be licensing each individual application, not the solution.
Okay.
I may be worth contacting us separately and having a look in detail, but I believe it would be licensing every single application. So maybe licensing your users with Power App per user plan, for example.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? I will carry on. So you might want to take your applications to external users, and to do that, you could use Power Apps Portal. It's licensed for external users, and there are two types of external user. Users who just view web pages, we're going to license them for page view, and users who have a username and a password, we're going to license them for login. The page view licenses is licensing packs of 100,000 logins. So 100,000 page views. So that's a pack of 100,000 page views on rolling per month. And authenticated users are licensed per logins in packs of 100 logins, where one login is a user logging in for 24 hours. So if you had the same user logging in every day for 30 days in a month, that would take 30 out of the 100 login pack. There are additional tiers available, so in effect, the more logins you require, the cheaper your licenses become. And then for your internal users needing to access the portals, they'll be licensed either via Power Apps or via your Dynamics 365 Enterprise licenses. Any questions on that? Perfect. Now for Power Automate. Power Automate is what allows us to create business processes without the need for coding. And to license Power Automate, again, we see that same concept of standard and premium connectors. There's a link here that's available where we can search for connectors to confirm whether these are standard or premium connectors. Your standard connectors, such as those connecting to 365 data, automating email processes and calendar processes, for example, are included as part of Office 365 and Microsoft 365. For premium connectors, where the processes are connecting to data outside of 365, such as Azure Automation, as you can see on the screen here, for example, would need Power Automate licenses. And there are two ways to license Power Automate. Either by licensing the flow itself, for example, where you might have few flows, but a lot of users needing access to these. And when you license Power Automate per flow, the first time you purchase Power Automate per flow licenses, you have to buy a minimum of 5. After that, you can buy in increments of 1. Or you can license the users for Power Automate, so we're licensing every user accessing or benefiting from the flow. And that allows licensed user to access unlimited flows. So let's have a look at a couple of examples of what you could do with Power Automate. So you have here an example of using Power Automate to save all OneDrive folders to Azure Storage. Now the Azure connector is a premium connector, so would need to license that either per flow or licensing the users using that flow. Or we could look at a standard connector example here, so saving all 365 email attachments to OneDrive for Business. That's only using standard connectors, so we wouldn't need to license that flow or license the users. We would just need to make sure they have 365 licenses. Now, Power Automate is also included as part of the licensed Power Apps. So if you have a flow which is triggered by a Power App application, which is licensed separately, then you don't need to license that flow. You only need to license the flows which are completely separate to license Power Apps application, because Power Apps include Power Automate within the application context. Any question? So Catherine, what are the price for Power Apps portal licenses? We can provide you with pricing at the end of the call. You'll have a poll question to contact us and we'll be able to give you pricing for these. The price will vary depending on how many external users you have, how many logins you have. Any more questions? Perfect. So now on to RPA. So with Power Automate, we can also use RPA, which stands for Robotic Process Automation. RPA is what allows us to automate legacy applications where there aren't any APIs or connectors available by recording mouse clicks, keyboard use, and data entry, and then replaying the steps within the process automation. In Power Automate, it's done through a flow which is called a UA flow connector, and of course, all done with low to no code. Now you'll see with RPA, we have two types of robotic process automation, attended or unattended. An attended RPA is action by a user, so user would need to be logged in for the process to start. But an unattended RPA will run automatically. So your flow will trigger the RPA using the UI flow connector, either via an attended motion or an unattended motion, and each will have their own licensing model. With the attended RPA, we're licensing the actual user. So we're licensing the user, triggering the RPA with Power Automate per user with attended RPA. The unattended RPA, however, is licensed per bot. So we're licensing the actual bot with Power Automate unattended RPA add-on, which is an add-on to either a per flow plan or an add-on to per user with attended RPA plan. Although because the bot is unattended, we're more likely to see it as an add-on to the per flow plan. And now where we're licensing unattended RPA per bots, those bots might need to have an Office 365 account and mailbox. They might need to edit Excel file or access a virtual desktop. To do this, we'll need to license the bot with M365 unattended RPA license to access and use any of the 365 services. Now here, let's look at a simple example. So I could use RPA to change currencies of price list every month. So I have a price list and I need to change the currency of that price list every month. I use Power Automate to run the flow automatically whenever I receive that price list and license that Power Automate on a per flow license because it is kind of self-automated. And then I will use unattended RPA to automatically look up for the up-to-date currency rate and then use that to edit and convert the price list using RPA unattended license. And that bot is editing an Excel file. So we're going to need M365 unattended license to allow us to access and edit Excel. We could also look at a more complicated scenario. So here we're using RPA to automate invoice processing. The invoice arrives via email. That triggers the flow using Power Automate. And then to update the invoicing system, we'll use RPA. What we're missing here is some form of artificial intelligence to extract the information, find out the right information to extract. The way you can do that is to use AI Builder. AI Builder adds artificial intelligence to your applications within the Power Platform and Dynamics 365 without the need for coding. It's licensed on a capacity basis per service credits. So you've got an AI Builder calculator that you can use to look at the type of service used. For example, here we've got sentiment analysis. We enter the number of characters which will need to be analyzed, and that will tell us the number of service credits required to use service. Both RPA licenses include 5,000 service credits, and then Microsoft have recently added AI Builder service credits to the Power Apps licenses as well. And then when you buy additional service credits, you buy a pack of 1 million service credits. So let's go back at our invoicing processing example and look at what licenses we might require overall. So if I go back to that processing example, the Power Automate flow would be created to trigger a flow whenever an invoice arrives, from which the information would be extracted using AI Builder, and then the invoicing system is updated using RPA. So what license do we need? Well, we've got an invoice processing. That invoice processing is a flow, and that can be accessed and used by any users, and it's unattended anyway, so easier to license using Power Automate per flow license. The connector is UI flow. I am using RPA, so I'll need to license one unattended RPA add-on, which is an add-on to our per flow license. It's unattended because the task is automated. And then my bot is using email to ask for approval. So I'm going to need one Microsoft 365 unattended license. And the automation uses AI Builder to extract information in the invoice using the invoice processing feature. So I will go again to the AI Builder calculator, look for the invoice processing elements, add the number of invoices processed per month. Here's 100 invoices as a random example. Put 100 here in a number of invoices, and it will tell me the number of AI Builder capacity add-ons I need. Here, 1 unit, so 1 million service credits. Any question on that or anything that we've seen today so far?
Yes, I've just got one question. As most of these applications are user-based driven,
Yeah.
How would the licensing team know that the user has implemented something that requires a license?
So it depends. With the Power Apps, it depends how you're licensing. So if you're using the if you're using the Power Apps per user plan, you'd need to assign the license to the user before they can create applications. If you're using per user per app, you need to assign a license to the application, again, before they can use the premium connectors. So it's one of those where you shouldn't be able to use the licenses without having a license assigned.
Okay. Would that be the same for Power Automate as well?
Yeah, Power Automate, again, either license the flow or license the user, but again, you won't be able to use premium connectors if you don't have the right licensing.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. And then another question here on Power Portal. If you do business to business or business to customer via Power Portal, will you need to license that user login or view of the Power Portal? If they have a login, so a username and a password, you will use one of your 100 login packs. So you'll buy a pack of 100 logins, and that user will take some of the login from that pack. Usually what we look at is look at the number of logins you think you'll have on a monthly basis, and then look at the best licensing model for that. If they don't have a login or a password and they view the portal without authenticating, then you'll need the per view pages portal. Sorry, the Power Apps portal per page view licenses. Any more questions? Brilliant. So let's have a look at Power Virtual Agent. So Power Virtual Agent is what allows us to create customer service chatbots using a guided no-code graphical interface. The license per tenant, so you will buy a per tenant license, which would include 1,000 chatbots and 2,000 chat sessions. And then if you need additional chat sessions, then you can buy them for 1,000 additional chat sessions. And then a chat sessions is either 60 minutes of back and forth and starts when you click on start using the bot now, basically, or 100 back and forth. You will also need a per user license to manage the chatbots, but that's actually free. It is, however, required for all of the Power Virtualization to work. We also have chatbots included with Office 365. So that's to be used within Teams only. So, for example, you could use it to provide first level IT help desk using chatbots via Teams. And then let's look at Dataverse Storage. So Dataverse is the underlying storage that sits throughout all of the Power Platform and Dynamics 365. And when you buy Power Apps and Power Automate licenses, it includes Dataverse Storage as standard per tenant. And you also get additional storage accrued on a per user basis. That can be used within Power Apps environments. And then if you create Power Apps portals, you have to have at least 1 gig of free database storage. So they're used to create additional portals as well. If you need additional storage, you can buy Dataverse Storage on a per gig basis. Now, finally, Power BI. Before I start with that, I'll just pose for questions again.
Very quick question. Apologies if this is out of scope. Going back to Power Apps, am I right in thinking that there is no ability to allow a user to interact with a Power App that somebody else has built without them having a Power App license?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so we couldn't build something internally and just enable internal staff or working for a college, so students, for example, to interact with that without them actually having a license to go and build their own apps.
Yeah, you'll still be able to build applications that are included with 365. So if you're using Canvas apps only, you're not using Dataverse and you're not using Premium connectors, you'll be able to build applications in that way.
Okay.
Any more questions?
I have a question. What's the minimum database storage that is available with a premium license? Does it start with 2 GB? Because I think I saw on the previous slide 2 GB. Yeah,
let me just. So you've got a default per tenant Dataverse capacity and entitlement. So you get 10 gig of database storage, 20 gig of file storage, and 2 gig of log storage.
Okay, so 2 GB is log storage, and so you're saying if I've got a Power Automate per user with attended RPA license, that's ideally a premium license, isn't it? So do I get 10 GB of database capacity plus 20 GB of capacity and 2 GB log capacity? Am I correct?
Yeah, exactly that. Absolutely. So the default entitlement is per tenant. That means if you've got Power Apps and Power Automate and Dynamics 365, they all give you the same default entitlement. So you won't get that twice. You'll get that once across all your licenses, and then additional per user entitlement.
Okay, yeah, got it. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Sorry, regarding the license, regarding the storage, is it based around the tenant or is it based around the environment? So do you get that for the tenant? Okay, fair point.
Any more questions? Carry on. So on to Power BI. So we have two main types of Power BI plans. We have Power BI Pro, license per user, and allows licensed user to create dashboards. Any user who wants to see those dashboards will also need to have a Power BI Pro license. You also have available Power BI Premium per user. That it is licensed in the same way, but it just gives you more features. For example, higher refresh rates and paginated reports. Any user accessing dashboards with the premium features will also need Power BI Premium per user license. Another way to license that would be to purchase Power BI Premium per node. So that gives you dedicated resources and you license the node itself. Power BI Premium comes between P1 and P5. The higher the number, the more powerful the node. And that will also allow anyone to access reports without the need for additional user licenses. So user licenses are required to create dashboards, but not to view dashboards. That tends to become more cost effective if you're looking at having around 500 users or more who need to view those dashboards. So here, little example of using Power BI Premium per node. So to allow us unlimited numbers of users accessing the dashboards as shown as basic users here. So we've licensed the node with Power BI Premium. That gives us dedicated capacity. We've licensed the authors with Power BI Pro. And then any user accessing the dashboards are covered with the Premium per node license. So I've got next a slide which will go through the different sharing options, but it's worth also noting that Power BI Premium includes Power BI Report Server to be installed on premises. If all you need is actually Power BI Report Server on premises, then it would be cheaper to actually buy SQL Server Enterprise per core with active software assurance that also gives you Power BI Report Server. And then Martin will go through the licensing of that later on today. So now we have different sharing options available depending on the licensing used. So with Power BI Free, you can't share content at all. Next, with Power BI Pro, you can share and create content. As we've seen earlier, you do need a license to both view and create the content. With Power BI Premium license per node, that is designed for internal use, although it can also be used for external users, but it is designed for internal use to share content through websites. To share dashboards, you need Power BI Pro, but to view them with the per node licensing, you don't need any licenses required. These are the P SKUs. We then have Power BI Embedded with the EM SKUs. That's again designed for internal use, but to be embedding content, so usually using something like SharePoint. And again, that's licensed per node. And then finally, we have Power BI Embedded using the A SKUs. That's licensed per node via Azure, and that's aimed at external users. So we're embedding content here into web apps to share with external non-employees. Internal users cannot view content unless they have a Power BI Pro license. Any question at all?
Yeah, what's a node?
It's basically a virtual machine.
Ah, okay, a VM.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a VM in Azure, and you'll choose kind of how powerful you want your VM to be. So number of cores, RAM, etc.
Okay. Can it simulate usage time? So for example, with the core usage, so at peak time, we can have more cores, and then off peak, we can reduce the cores. Would that then differentiate the costing, or is it just a fixed price?
You've got two choices. So you would choose your base price first, for example, P1, which is the lowest. And then Microsoft released a service, which I believe is still on preview, which allows you to have peaks. So you start paying a base of a P1, and then if you have peaks, then it will then use that as your service to allow you to have that flexibility. I think it's still in preview.
Okay, thank you.
That's right. Then I've got another question. Can you share Power BI with guests by licensing the guests rather than embedded? Yes, you can. So You can either use, for example, if you have Power BI Pro and you've licensed your internal users, you can also license your external guests with Power BI Pro. That's another option if premium was too expensive or embedded was not a solution. Any more questions? I'll carry on and then we'll have a final Q&A at the end as well. So we also have workshops available to help you with all of that Power Platform stuff. So we've got two types of workshops. We have a velocity workshop, which will take a deep dive into the services and how they can help your business. Usually there are a one-day workshop. And then when you're ready to start using the products, we have quick start workshops available, and that's actually helping you deploy and use the services. So with the Power Platform, we have data strategy workshops to review your approach to data strategy, how your data is used, managed, and stored within your organization. We then have data analytics quick starts. So that's a hands-on workshop that will help you on your journey towards modern data warehouse to power your business. And then we have dashboard in a day. So that's looking at Power BI, looking at how you create content, dynamic dashboards that convert your data into agile, actionable intelligence. We then have an app in a day. So that's looking at Power Apps and Power Automate and looking at what you can do and what business applications and workflows are available and how they work. And then finally, we've got a Power Platform Quick Start. That's a 5-day engagement that will cover the setup, configuration, and construction of new workflows, applications built on the Power Platform. Now, of course, every scenario is different. So if you would like to talk through your specific licensing of your applications, your automations or any Power Platform service, you can request a call with us to discuss your requirements, look at the technicalities of the Power Platform, and of course also book a workshop with us. At the end, you'll have 4 questions, which I believe are already up there, which you can use to set up calls. Or of course, you can use speak with your Bytes account manager to get that set up as well. But for now, we've got a bit of time to do a little Q&A if there are any remaining questions. Thank you very much. I'll stay on a little bit in case you do have any more questions, but just to let you know that at 11 a.m. we'll have a second session looking at hybrid infrastructure and licensing in the public cloud. At 1 p.m. we'll then look at licensing for modern workspace. At 2 p.m. we'll look at security, and then at 3 p.m. we'll look at optimizing cost in the cloud. Thank you very much.